In the past few months, I've started to notice something weird about a particular question I've been asking when meeting strangers, either during networking events or looking for new rejection opportunities. It's sort of like the more you say of a single word, the weirder that word becomes. For example,
Ball. Ball. Ball.
you've probably guessed it. The question is, what do you do? So in this video, I'm going to talk about why I think this question may be a terrible question. Before I go into why asking what do you do might be a terrible question, let's dive first into the reasons why we're asking that question in the first place. For those who finally graduated from college and lucky enough to find a job that isn't a bullshit job, term popularized by David Graeber, author of Bullshit Jobs, you start to realize that your persona is closely tied to your career choice. It sets, to a certain extent, the kind of lifestyle you adopt, the type of people you hang out with, and if you've transcended from the employee status to employer, it allows you to casually slap in a "I'm an entrepreneur" in a conversation. In a 40 hours work week, assuming you get 8 hours of sleep, 35% of your waking hours is spent at work. This doesn't consider the time that you spend outside of work trying to learn to be more productive or learning new things. Crazier than that, a study claims that a job loss is worse than losing a spouse. Even as a kid, your parents will end up asking you, what do you want to do when you grow up? To some extent, since a very young age, you start to shape your sense of identity based on your future career. Aside from the problem of potentially misjudging someone solely based on their career choice, I'd like to dig in a little bit deeper into other implication of asking the question of what do you do? When you're asked, you tell your job title, and sometimes that job title doesn't mean much. In some case, if you think of job posting, it feels like they've thrown in a bunch of overhyped word into a blender, and the result that came out of it is the job title that they decided to go with, like accountant ninja or social media trailblazer. Those are real. I've looked it up. The worst part is I probably have something similar in my LinkedIn profile. Then you follow up to ask about their day-to-day task. Or if it's a commonly known job, it kind of ends with a, oh, that's nice. So the problem I see in this situation is that it creates some sort of obsession over someone's title and social status that comes with it. Oftentimes, it is related to how much someone makes. There's nothing wrong with taking pride in your work or having a little bit of ambition. But right now, it feels like success is closely tied with money. And that quantifies your work more than it qualifies it. Of course, there are jobs that are easily perceived as essential for a healthy society, like doctors or teachers. But then, that title doesn't provide you with any more insights on their personality. And in those cases, just by relying on the title, it's easy to forget about our job's goal or whether we're owning up to our responsibilities. There's somewhat of a halo effect that kicks in. The halo effect is a cognitive bias where you perceive someone in a more favorable way based on a single characteristic. For example, a doctor can be seen as more generous, hardworking, smart just because they're a doctor. Now, on the opposite end, for those who have a job that is deemed as less prestigious but just as useful for a functional society, they might feel a little bit ashamed of it. There's definitely subjectivity to the arguments I present and exceptions to the rule, but I believe that putting these incomplete thoughts out there, it will have more benefits than harm. What do we do now? So instead of asking, what do you do? We can ask, how do you contribute? Or what's your contribution? One critique that we can have with that new question is that we're only shifting the sense of shame for those who doesn't have a prestigious job to those people who doesn't necessarily contribute to society. But not exactly. When you ask the question, what's your contribution? It doesn't mean what's your contribution to society. It can be what you do outside of work, like in your personal life. For example, making enough money to ensure that you raise your kid properly, or making those around you happy. By asking that, it allows the other person to explain more in details the impact of their work, or at least it opens up the conversation about the different actions that this person takes. A study claimed how good deed can inspire good deeds. So if I quote the article, the study, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, examines the warm, uplifting feeling we get from watching someone act with courage or compassion, a feeling psychologists refers to as moral elevation. Researchers have found that elevation induces positive emotions, makes people believe in the goodness of humanity, and inspires them to act more altruistically. And it's on that premise that I want to push forward the conversation of asking, how do you contribute? This acts as a reminder of good deed on top of allowing you to have a little bit of introspection. I'll admit, it's a bit weird to ask that question because we've never really asked this question before, and it kind of sounds moralizing. I'm sure there are smooth ways to slide in the topic in a conversation, but I'll let you guys figure out. I'm not the smoothest dude. Don't get me wrong, it still happens to me to judge people and be a prick once in a while. It's impossible to always be nice, we're all human beings after all. But the more we realize that we are sometimes asshole, the better we can become. That's kind of the idea behind the alternate question, which is, how do you contribute? It allows us to take a little pause and ask ourselves why we do certain things the way we do them right now. We can then assess the impact of our day-to-day behavior, talk about it openly, instead of just giving our job titles and leave it at that. Overall, my goal isn't necessarily to force a change, but rather to go back to the roots, take a look at what we've learned in our past experiences, question it, and see if it can be improved.